Hi, everybody. Welcome to Before It's Too Late. My name is Rich Carter, and I'm usually with my wife, Robbie, but she hasn't been on for a while as we've been focusing on these interviews with retirees. Today, you guys are in for a treat. I've got Walter, who retired at 52 years old. That's pretty dang lucky, if you ask me. Not because he was rich, not because he won the lottery, just because he felt that his work was taking too much out of him and it was time to go. So stick around and you'll hear about Walter's story. Okay, so I'm here with Walter today, and Walter has graciously agreed to talk about his retirement journey with you guys, and I appreciate Walter coming on. So thanks, Walter. And as you get started, why don't you give us a little bit about your work life, maybe where you're at, just kind of the basics about you, and we'll get into some questions.
Great. Thanks for having me, Rich. I really enjoyed. I've been I've watched your YouTube channel for the last several months, so I've really enjoyed your content. So thanks so much for the invitation and being able to come on and kind of share my story. And I feel like I'm just a normal person living a normal life. But I did retire at the end of last year at the age of 52, which I know is pretty early.
52,
So that
yeah. People
yeah.
talk about me at 59, so like 52, I'm loving your life.
Yeah. So, and just to rewind a little bit, just a normal guy, grew up, went to college, finished school, found a job, fell in love, got married, had kids. So I would say it's just kind of a normal story of someone who kind of grows up and goes through and do the type of things that you expect to happen. So I kind of followed the steps of what's typically laid out for someone growing up in the United States of America. I am a Gen X sort of person, so people might be able to relate to that generation. And I will say that I had a couple of just real blessings, people in my life who steered me towards saving at an early age. And I'd say that was primarily my mother, who is just a real sharp, brilliant lady. And I remember back in high school, getting a part-time job, and this might actually have been junior high. And my mom's like, "Well, let me know how much you make, and we're going to open up a IRA account, and I'll contribute on your behalf for how much ever you make." So my savings journey did start pretty early, probably compared to a lot of folks. And I'm a saver. That's just my natural inclination. And I married a wonderful woman who is not much of a spender either. So I will say we kind of had some good things going on in our life. So I always enjoyed saving more than spending. And like I said, my wife was kind of the same way. Just out of school, when I graduated, I had a hard time finding a job. I graduated with a degree in business, but really, in high school and junior high, my hobby was tinkering with computers. So I really just wanted to play with computers. So when I graduated and couldn't find a job, I ended up getting a job at the university where I've been going to school for the first couple of years, and I really enjoyed that. But once I met my wife and got married, it's like, wow, I need to make real money here. So for that was the point. Up to that point, the key to the story was that the university had a really generous retirement savings plan, so they matched dollar for dollar up to 10%, which I
Okay.
never found anything that generous in any of the places
Yeah,
I
that's pretty
worked
good.
going forward. Yeah, so I always took advantage of those along the way, and I did work in the Kansas City area for a while, and that's where our first child was born. And my wife and I both grew up in Northwest Arkansas, so we wanted to be closer to home and family, especially as we had kids for the grandparents
Right.
and whatnot. So I looked for a job. Didn't find any in Northwest Arkansas, but I found one over in the Tulsa area. So we moved over there, and that's where our middle child was born. And it was nice, only half the distance back home. But after a few years, also found a job back here in Northwest Arkansas and worked for a corporation. I made pretty good money, and again, along the way, pretty good savings. But not to say that I didn't make mistakes with money. So a couple of funny stories was when I did met my wife and we got engaged and we got married. I was like, wow, we need to really do this up right. So for a honeymoon, I decided that we would go and spend a week in Orlando and go to Epcot Center. And I didn't make hardly any money at all. Maybe around 19 or 20,000. I was out of school and working full time, but just working at a university. Not a
Right.
glamorous or high paying job. And my wife, she worked nursery at a local hospital. So when we got back from our honeymoon, we all of a sudden had credit card debt for the first time, a couple of $1,000s worth.
Right.
And so that was one of my, formidable learning experiences when it came to credit card debt. So it was kind of painful to have that debt hanging around for the next several months. And I don't know, it maybe took a year or two to get that paid off. And another funny story I'll share, mistakes with money, right, is we had moved to Kansas City, living in an apartment. I was making good money, about doubled my salary when I moved from that university job to a corporate job in Kansas City. And we were out one Friday night looking for a mattress, and we happened by a car lot. It's like, wow, that's a nice car. I really like that. So we ended up buying a car,
Went,
and
went shopping for a mattress and bought a car. I got
yeah.
it.
So anyway, so bought a car. It wasn't brand new, but maybe a year old. And so all of a sudden we had, auto loan for the first time ever. And so, that was kind of painful experience. It took quite a long time to get that car paid off, and kind of similar sort of thing. This was around 1998, and we wanted to buy a house because we wanted to have kids, and I kind of like to do things in
Hmm.
a certain order. So looking around, and there was some new builds going on, and man, all that financing, you only need maybe 2 to 3% down. All these great incentives, and so our first house was a home in a subdivision, and took out a loan for maybe, I think the price of the house was maybe 110,000, and we paid maybe 2 or 3,000 down. I don't know. It might have been 5,000 down, but so all of a sudden, 30-year mortgage, like I don't know, 7 or 8% kind of that time frame, and after about a year, it's like, this is painful. Like, I have all these payments, and I'm making great money. This is, right around the .com, hoopla. So, and I was in IT, so I was doing well, making money. But man, we were just, once we were making all the payments, it's like we had very little money. Now, along the way, we did contribute to a retirement plan, but all that to say is money was tight.
Right.
I would
Yeah,
say
it
from
sounds
those,
like the story of probably 75% of us, right? Like
yeah,
you go out, you buy a car, you get a house, and then you're like, holy smokes, I've only got an extra $100 a month. I got to be pretty careful.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that was in 98. In 99, our first child was born. And of course, there's expenses that come along with that, right? So, from these experiences, I learned along the way, we never, all our future houses we purchased, we always put more money down, and when we got older houses and spent less money. The first couple of vehicles we got auto loans for, but eventually saved up enough, got it paid off. And then from that point forward, never had an auto loan again. And any vehicle I purchased, I made sure that I was committed to keeping it for at least 10 years. And my point of that being that I was able to, even though, for a while I made good money, I will say back after I moved back to Northwest Arkansas, I really was stressed out over my job. I was in IT, I was in a corporate setting, that the expectations were high. I was making more money than I had ever made in my life. So that was fine, but it was just, I was always working. I was always needing to go in and do changes, morning, noon, evenings, weekends.
And
Just
your wife's still working too?
no. My wife never worked. We homeschooled our
Okay.
kids. We were committed to her staying home and raising our kids, which put a lot of pressure on me to make sure that I could provide for the family. So we were
Right.
always a single income family. And like I said, I worked in IT. I made pretty good money. However, when I reached that point, and this was right around 2004, where it's like, I got to get out of this. My third child had just been born. And it's like, geez, this is just, it's not good. So I actually took a pretty substantial pay cut in 2004 and went back to that university job.
Okay.
And so I took a 35% pay cut, and I was only able to do that because my wife and I didn't spend money and all those things I said about not buying too much house, not having auto loans. That all paid off and really set me up to be able to take a 35% pay cut to go back and work in a university setting. Great benefits, but the pay was not great. And I remember the people around me were just shocked and they just couldn't believe I was able to make that change, and these were people who lived in lifestyles that were way above or right at their earning potential. And
Right.
so they could never be in a position, or certainly were not in a position to take, a lower paying job because of stress or lifestyle or other
Right.
types of issues. So I would say that was a really critical, lifestyle sort of planning thing that really benefited me quite a bit. So, and that sets up just to say that the last that was from 2004 until 2024. I worked in a university setting. I did gradually get pay raises, and I ended up making just a little over six figures for my last full year I worked there. But all that to say, I was always a single income family. Again, the university had great benefits. I got that dollar to dollar match up to the first 10%.
Mm-hmm.
So once you do that for a couple of
Yeah.
decades, that
Right.
builds up nicely. And I would say that coupled with also back my wonderful parents, who were, I would say, frugal. They were born in the era of the Depression, so they had a sort of generational thing, and maybe you could relate with your parents or maybe grandparents, where they always had a pantry full of food. They always had a freezer chest full of food, and but they wouldn't spend money.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
just they would never spend money. And my mom loved to invest. She loved playing in the stock market. And so, I benefited from that when they passed. And that kind of accelerated perhaps my retirement plans. Kind of getting into the thinking about when I should retire. I really didn't think about it too much all until maybe the last 5 or 7 years of my career. Up to that point, I enjoyed what I did. I enjoyed who I worked with. I enjoyed who I worked for. And then we had a series of leadership turnovers, and just the workplace changed and the culture changed. And there was some rough times there where I really didn't enjoy what I did. I really didn't enjoy a lot of people I worked with, or maybe even who I reported to. But I was not in a position just to stop working.
Right.
And that was an incentive and motivator for me to start thinking about how I can get out of this situation. So it's something that I started planning for, say 5 or 6 years ago. So it's not something that I just jumped into, but I did benefit from when my parents passed. My mom passed
Okay.
in 2020, which helped set me up. And then my dad passed in 2023. And so, and that helped accelerate my plans to retire. But I was certainly eager, just because, like I said, I was not really enjoying the work I did. It wasn't a horrid experience, like some people I've seen on YouTube and other channels that had just dreadful work and,
Right.
a poor experience. I would say it was just really, I changed, technology changed, the culture changed, and it just wasn't a good fit anymore. My job would be great for someone who really dug technology and really, was into it. And I was just kind of, I was reaching the point where I'd been in IT for 30 years and I was just kind of tired of it. It wasn't the same spark and the people had changed. So this all played
So
into my planning for early retirement.
so once you kind of, so it sounds like 47, 48, 49, you're thinking, okay, I don't know how much longer I can do this. What were you looking at to say, okay, I'm going to need, I mean, did you have a number in your head that you needed this amount in order to be able to live the lifestyle that you wanted? And again, I don't want the number, but was it a number you were shooting for? Was it just you were looking at your budget and saying, okay, here's what I have in savings. I can get this much out a month and I can live the same lifestyle, or we have to make some cuts, or what kind of was going into the thought process?
Yeah, was I it, and I was initially thinking, I just maybe need to look for a different job, a different career. where it's okay. I don't need to make the money I'm making. We, like I said, we had no debt. I paid off my house, maybe 7, 8 years ago. And so I and continued to save and invest, and that was all growing and compounding over time. So some of it was just me thinking, okay, I'm reaching the point where I don't need to make this type of salary and I need to look for work I really enjoy. And so all that kind of prepared me along the way. I was learning, I was reading books, read a lot of books. And then for the last couple of years, just watching YouTube videos and learning from a lot of certified financial planners who specialize in early retirement and kind of learning along the way. And it was a combination of the finances were starting to come into play where I could say, okay, I could see where I could reach the point where I don't need to make nearly as much as I do now and I would be fine. And then also that place where I reached the point where in my career where it's like, this doesn't interest me. And I feel like if I would just step aside, step down, they would find someone who really, there's someone out there who would really dig what my job and would
Okay.
really thrive and enjoy it. And by me just hanging around, just kind of punching the clock and doing,
Hmm.
the best I could, but I really couldn't stand to think about work. Uh, you know, not only just after hours or in the shower, where maybe a decade or two ago, I'd be in the shower thinking about a work problem and how I could solve it. To I don't want to think about this stuff, and it was just
It's
so
just
it's a
time to
combination
go.
of yeah, you reach that point
Yeah.
where you say, I don't want to hold the people up or be a hindrance to the people around me who, and some of them really dug what they did and I really envied them. But there were other people you could tell who really didn't enjoy it either, but they just were not in a position to unplug and do something different. Part of it was, my parents passing, and then part of it was we had just started to build a house in the later half of 2023. So it was we want the house to be built. We want to get through all that. And then I could see by sometime in 2024 that I could pull the plug. We'd have enough money to be okay. And maybe I could make it all the way to 59 and a half, where the majority of
Hmm.
of the money that I would need is in those retirement type accounts I can't access. So that was kind of it. And there was never this point where I said, I know for sure this will work out. There's a little bit of unknown, a little bit
Yeah.
of I don't know for
Yeah.
sure. But I felt confident enough to be able to take the plunge and say, well, it'd be okay. If I need to go back and get a part-time job to have a little bit of income, that would be okay. I'd figure it out. If investments do well and the stock market does well, then I'd be okay. If that didn't turn out well, then I could do some other things to access that retirement funds for 59 and a half, even though it's kind of a hassle
Right.
and would produce some limitations. So,
Okay, I'm going to break in just for a second here and just kind of put it out there again. If anybody wants to tell their retirement story or their pre retirement story, reach out to me. I'll put my email address on the screen here. It's before it's too late 2023 at gmail.com. You can reach out to me. We'll set up a time. We'll do an interview. If you've been watching these, they're pretty casual, and we just like to hear the story of other retirees, whether it's good or bad. Honestly, I haven't had a person tell me that retirement's a bad thing. So if you're that person, please reach out to me.
and I would say another key component that people have asked me about, and I know there's this constant desire to understand, well, how do you handle healthcare?
Right. That was
You
going to be a
know,
question I would ask.
yeah,
Yeah.
how do you handle healthcare? And that's always a question. It's like, well, You know, I did a video of this on my YouTube channel, but essentially, there's 5 different sort of options, everything from Cobra, from your former employer. There's health sharing ministries, that you could do that I kind of thought about. We have some pre-existing conditions, so it's not a good fit. And Cobra was pretty expensive. And so I ended up going in the, Affordable Care Act marketplace, or, also known as Obamacare.
Hmm.
And it seemed like it was a good option for us. So we ended up going that route. Now, the key was that I had to state how much my income was going to be for the year, and it needed to be more than just a couple of $1,000s. Otherwise, I would fall into the Medicaid
Hmm.
program, which I didn't want to do. And if it was too much, I would receive some Affordable Care Act insurance premium supplements that would reduce that cost. But if I made too much money, then I would have to pay
Hmm.
some of that back, and that would be reconciled at the tax time for the
Right.
next year. So I'm kind of under that. Okay, I kind of earmarked about $60,000, and so insurance for myself and my wife is $425 a month, and it's a very reasonable healthcare plan with, set amounts that you pay if you go to a doctor or if you have a procedure, and that's worked out well for us. And then I have, this was kind of the first time to release my kids. I have 3 adult kids, and they were in various stages of not working and being done with
Hmm.
school and not having a job, full-time job yet, and some are still in a little bit of school, so kind of released them. And one went without insurance for the majority of this year, but recently got a full-time job. That's my oldest, who's 26, so she's fine. And then my youngest daughter, who will be, she's a little under 22, and she's still going to school and doing some part-time work. And we got, again, going through the Affordable Care Act marketplace, just get a plan that's specific to her. And that's what she pays. And my son, who's in school, but he's married, his wife recently got a job, so
So
they're
they're
now
covered.
covered.
Yeah.
So we kind of had to come up with a few different plans to cover everyone, but I would say it's worked out well. I know a lot of people really think that they need to keep a job in order to have health care, and that's really not the case. I mean,
That,
there
that's what
are,
I tell.
yeah,
That's what I say all the time. Is like, I mean, maybe it is true that you need to keep working to have healthcare, but don't just assume it. Like, go out to the marketplace and figure
yeah,
out what the number is, and if you can afford it, and whatever you've been saving, maybe in your case, you guys are paying less than $500 a month for insurance. That sounds pretty good, and I think if people took the time to look and they knew what they're going to have for income, so they can get an accurate assessment when they go out to the marketplace, that I think that people would be surprised. Now, I do know there's some changes coming at the end of this year as it
yeah,
stands now, right? So things are
yeah,
going to change, but and I think that's part of, right now we're in this government shutdown. I think
yeah,
how that all flushes out is probably going to make an impact, but we'll see.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So, making sure that I could cover healthcare, feel reasonably confident I could cover our expenses, and then knowing I'm in a place in my career and the job I'm at where I know this is not a good fit, this is not where I need to be, it's
Mhm.
not fulfilling, and I don't need the money. And it almost felt selfish to continue to be in that job role, knowing, how I felt about it and
Okay.
knowing that there would be someone else out there for it. So that's when I pulled the trigger and told them, hey, at the end, this was by, beginning of November of last year, 2024, I said, end of the year, I'm done. I'm retiring. And there's some awkward conversations there, right? So you tell
Right.
people, and they have that look in their eye, and they're thinking, so you just got to spend time on the beach. What are you going to do? And at the time, I was thinking, well, I thought I would go ahead and try to do some financial planning, and so I was thinking that would be like a 1099 sort of job, and
Mhm.
I'd wind up a firm that I'd work for, and I just wanted to give it a try and see how it goes. Kind of also part of the reason I wanted to retire was there were things I wanted to do and things I wanted to try in life that I couldn't do and I couldn't try if I'm working in a full-time job. On top of that, for me to have outside employment, I had to file the paperwork, get approval from my employer. Like there was these
Hoops you had to
restrictions and
jump
these
through.
barriers,
Yeah.
to things that I want to try. And that was when you say, well, you're only 52. It's like, yeah, but there are things I want to try, even career wise, professions wise that I want to try, along with traveling, spending more time with my family and just doing other things. And I found that having to work 40 hours or more just was preventing me from being able to try, do, experience those things I wanted to do. And even in the back of my mind, I was thinking, if I retire and I don't enjoy being retired, I could always go back to work. I would not make the salary I was making, and maybe it wouldn't be in the profession, in the career, my previous professional career, and that would be okay. I was completely okay with that. It's not like, you know, you're making this sort of decision and you can't recover from it, which I think people kind of get that feel.
Yeah, I
And
think that's
also,
true too. Yeah, I think people
yeah,
like, I'm not going to retire because what if it doesn't work?
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
if it doesn't work, you can make adjustments, and I'll give my financial guy a little bit of credit there. He basically said, if it doesn't work, two things will happen. You will adjust your expectations to life, right? Or you go out and you find something that fill the gap, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
for sure. For sure. And we all know people who waited too late, right? And
For sure.
that's the title of your channel. And I know you relate experience of just retiring and you had a family member, like a
Hmm.
cousin or
Yeah, my nephew.
yeah, a
Yeah.
nephew passed away, suddenly, and you talked about how because you had just retired, you had the time, the energy where you could travel, you could spend time with that family, you could help out, you could be involved. Whereas if you hadn't decided to retire and you still had your full-time job, then that wasn't going to be the case, right?
Right. It's
And
definitely a lot of freedom. I mean, I think
yeah,
people underestimate the load of stress that goes away, whether you like your job or not, right? Just
right.
when you don't have to go, there's just a level of freedom that just makes your mind at ease a lot more times, right?
It does, and I experienced that as well. Okay, university typically closed down for between a week at the last of the year between Christmas and New Year's. So kind of, and I had some vacation time I took. So by about mid-December I was done, but it didn't really start kicking in until that January 2nd when I would
Hmm.
typically head
Going back
back
to
to
work,
work
yeah,
and start back. And the first couple of years I couldn't wait to get back. And the last couple of years I dreaded going back, right? So and that was part of that shift that took place over time. But I experienced that unwinding of stress and that I didn't realize that I had, and that was not necessarily any undue stress at work, but just the normal having to keep track of things, having a boss,
having a
having
schedule,
goals,
yeah,
having a schedule, yeah,
yep.
having to get up and do that. And I did over the next several weeks and several months, kind of felt this tension go away
Hmm.
that you don't realize you have it until you experience the absence of it. And so
Right,
people
yep,
who are working aren't going to understand that, but they will someday when they get to that point where they stop working full time. And as you said, you experience it as well. It's just this tension, this little bit of anxiety, a little bit of having to keep track of all these things going on at work because any vacation, any weekend, like you get a reprieve from it, but it's not something you can just forget completely about. Like you have to go back to work after the
right,
vacation. And that was another thing. After even taking time off and going back to work, I felt like I was being punished because the work didn't go away. It just piled up, the emails, the correspondence, the
yeah,
whatever it was all still there for me where I felt like, taking vacation time was sort of a punishment when you came back. It's like came back from my vacation, my time away, and it was dreadful. So those type of things I'm so thankful that I got to be released from
yeah.
and walk away from. And I want other people to be able to experience that.
So, what are you doing to fill your days then? I mean, did you as you were leading up to it, where you're thinking, do I have a hobby? I mean, you talked about possibly doing some financial planning, but was it? I mean, are you doing some fun stuff? Things
Yeah.
that you enjoy.
Some of my time was doing fun stuff. I started a YouTube channel in February just because I was thinking, okay, well, I'd be able to help a few people in person, but maybe I can help a lot more people just by sharing my experiences with the YouTube channel. So that's how Rewire Retire was born.
Okay.
And so I post a couple of videos a week, and I enjoy that and do that just for fun. I'm trying to share and help others in a way that's more comfortable for me
Okay.
than trying to go out and solicit business. So And so, what I thought I would be doing and what I had planned to do when I first retired has completely changed here. We're only 9 months into it. It's changed where
Yeah, you have to be a little flexible, though. I think that's
it,
part. That,
it
again, that's the bonus of being retired. Is if you don't like something, you move on to the next thing.
yeah. So, and that, I would say that is the one key word that people need to use when they talk about retirement, early retirement is flexibility. You just
Hmm.
have to have flexibility. And yeah, I'd say that's a key point. And for my wife, we got the house built. We moved on 10 acres. We have chickens. We have, a garden. And, sometimes aspire to have more animals and there's land to take care of. So I have the woods in my backyard, which, I always had this, as a child growing up. I had access to a lot of green space. And for me, I'd run out of the house, run out in the woods
Hmm.
and build a fort, play army, you know, play in the snow. And of course, growing up, and then the city got large where I grew up, and that green space went away, and I never had that green space, where I could just go out and have fun in the woods. And so I have that now. So when the temperature is nice and we're getting in the season where there's no more ticks and and other mosquitoes and things, where I get out and I enjoy being in nature. I enjoy walking. I generally try to walk, several miles each morning.
Hmm.
I'm a Christian. I'm growing my relationship with God and spending more time in the Word and doing those things that are really important. I'm spending more time with my family. Um, Kind of a thing that came up, was some friends of ours that were actually, that we knew from church, were they were looking for people to, join up with them and go on a trip to Greece, footsteps of Paul, visit a lot of those places. And
Hmm.
so my wife and I said, yeah, sure, we're available. So at the end of
There
this
you
month, we're
go.
going to go to Greece, and we're going to
Good for
go,
you.
a lot of the places that you would find in, Acts 18 to 20,
Yeah.
for Paul's, second missionary journey. So we're going to go to Corinth. We're going to go to Ephesus. We're going to go to Philippi. A lot of those places. We're going to go see
Nice.
the place in Patmos where John had his vision, that turned into the book of Revelation. And that was nothing on our radar at all when I first retired. That's just, hey, this came up. That sounds cool. And so, hey, we're never been overseas. So it's, we'll see how it goes. If we enjoy it, maybe there'll be additional trips. If not, one and done, we're good with that.
Yeah,
So, and we're thinking next year, we've always wanted to take a cruise to Alaska. So we're kind of lining up and thinking about that cruise to Alaska for next year. So we're lining up things. There's things that have come along that, have come our way that we said yes to and we're going to do. And then there's things we want to really be sure and accomplish, and then we've had on the radar for a while to accomplish. And so we're lining up those things, and we're
that's right.
doing it.
Good.
And that's all part of the journey, and that's what this is all about. Because as I said, I think we all know people, friends and family, who they had plans for retirement and they passed away
Yep.
and they didn't make it. And I feel sad for them and their families because I knew they had plans. I knew there were things they wanted to accomplish and they didn't make it. And so those were plans and ideas and, and just futures that didn't develop and didn't happen just because people were scared to retire. And I
Yeah.
will call out our industry, not our industry, but the financial services industry, about they really want to scare people into investing with them and keeping their money with them. And so there's a real incentive to push people to not retire for a lot of different reasons,
Right.
and continue to invest their money with them. And there's incentives for the government for you not to retire. There's incentives by employers for you not to retire. So everywhere you turn, there are reasons and places, the media, and others that say, you need to work another year and just keep moving those goalposts, for another year, just another year, just another year. Where, someday that's not going to work out. You're going to
Right.
bump into the time where you're not going to be here anymore, and you don't want to miss out on those things. If there are things you want to do in life, whether it's their career or extended time with family and friends or things you want to accomplish
Yep.
in this life, then you got to get after it because, life
Tomorrow's
is
not
short.
guaranteed.
There is no guarantee for tomorrow. Exactly
Right.
right. So,
Yeah.
and that's why I appreciate your channel and other channels like yours that just try to, share a perspective. And I do the same thing on what it's like to retire early. So, what are some of the questions you have, the issues you run into, and how do you deal with them?
Right.
That's what it's all about.
Okay. Well, I think that I don't think I have much else to ask you, Walter. I appreciate your willingness to share your journey, and yeah, I mean, I you mentioned your YouTube channel, so hopefully people maybe will switch over and see what you have to say there, here and there, and yeah, I congratulations on your retirement and stepping into the next phase, and I think you are a testament to if you want to do something, just do it and quit talking yourself out of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. Just do it. Make a plan and then act on it. And it's okay. It might be a little scary and you might have some doubts and you don't have it all figured out. I'm a very structured guy. I like to have everything planned out and know exactly what's going to happen. And life's not really like that. So,
Right.
make some reasonable
Yeah, when you got it all
preparations
figured
and
when you got it all figured out,
yeah,
God throws a curveball, and then you have to respond. So
yeah,
you know
have some
and the
faith.
thing about retirement is you're a lot more flexible to respond in a way that that you can feel good about it, and your family probably will benefit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to share my story.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching, and I hope you get some I guess some motivation from Walter retiring at 52 and living his best life. So thanks for watching our channel. God bless.